Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you how to make this macrame wings bracelet, and this is what mine's ended up looking like. So you have your full length bracelet here with the wings, set of wings going all the way across the bracelet. You can obviously make it as long as you want to, and then I just finished it off with some cord ends and a clasp that you can then just use to close it up and wear it. And then the wings are going to sit around your wrist all the way like this and give a really nice effect. So it can look a little something like this. Obviously it'll look different depending what materials that you choose to use, but that's completely up to you. So if you want to learn how to make this bracelet, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we'll need. Now the cord that I'm using here is a 0.4mm Eslon, and I just got this nice dark blue colour. Now as for the beads, we need a few different ones. So the first ones here are some 11/0 seed beads, and I'm just using this kind of pearly white colour. I thought it would go nicely with the angelic theme. Then I have some 2mm metal spacer beads, just in silver. And then the final ones here are some bicones, and these are 3mm bicones, and they're also going to have and add a nice sparkle to the kind of ethereal look as well. So let's get it all together and let's get started. And then as for the lengths of cords that we'll need, what I have here is 10 lengths of my Eslon of about 2 meters each. And what I've just done is put them all together at the end and tied a regular overhand knot just to help hold them together. So I've now taken all my cords here and the knot at the top and just fastened it to my board using some T-pins. So I'm just working on a Project Macrame board here. So we have all our 10 lengths. And then what we need to do is make a little section of some knots before we start actually making the wings. So I've separated out one length of cord here, one of my lengths, and I've just taken from the back, it doesn't really matter. So what we're going to do is do double half hitches for a little bit to make a little section there. And then I'm going to take this, it's coming out from underneath, around. I'm holding all the others in my other hand as if they were one cord, because we want to make a knot with this cord, the working cord here, around all of these together. Going to take this around my finger, all the way around all these cords, back underneath and up through the loop of the same cord. So it looks like that. So you're coming back on the side, over the top, back around underneath all the cords and up through itself. And then tighten that up. I'm going to do that again. So around my finger, back around and through the loop. Pull it all the way through and tighten that all the way up right below the previous one. So that's one double half hitch now. So what I'm going to do is to continue. If we just keep doing this, what you'll find you'll get is a spiral look, and that's not what we want. So I'm going to take my working cord here, back underneath all my holding cords, and pull it all the way underneath. So we're basically now just swapping hands. So I'm going to do the exact same thing but with opposite hands. So this single cord, that's the working cord, goes around my finger, but the opposite way. With opposite hands, back around all these cords and through the loop of itself. So it looks like the same thing, it's just on the other side. Pull it all the way up underneath the previous knot. And once more for that double half hitch. And tighten them nicely. So now we have 2 full double half hitches, alternating from side to side to keep this a nice straight cord line running all the way down through the center of the bracelet. So I'm going to do the same thing, bring my working cord back underneath my holding cord to get back over to the other side. So every time we make one full double half hitch, we want to bring it over to the other side. Take the working cord around your finger and through the loop, push your knot up, and once more for the double. Like that. I'm going to bring it back around to the other side. So always take the working cord underneath all the holding cords here. And then just do the exact same thing, make your double half hitch but with opposite hands. Make sure when you're tightening your knot here as well, that you hold your holding cords nice and taut. You don't have to pull hard on them, just nice and taut so they all become even and you're not going to have anything sticking out in between your knots there. So I'm going to keep doing this for a little while until I have a section that I think is long enough before I'm going to start making my very first wing. Now that I then have a little section of my knots here, what we need to do is start getting our cords ready so we can start making the first set of wings. I'm going to be using most of these in the bunch that were made knots around, so all the ones that acted as a holding cord for the first few knots here. So we need to start separating them out while we're still making some double half hitches with the working cord. So what I'm going to do is take one cord from one side, try and take ones that are pointing towards that side more naturally, and then also one from the other side, like that. Separate them out, pointing to each their own side, and then we have the working cord here. So I've just taken these two cords I separated out, put them over the working cord, because right now the working cord is coming out towards this side, my right side. It doesn't matter what side you start with, it just completely depends where you've ended up. But whatever side you started out with, this is where we made the last knot. So we need to keep doing the same thing. I bring it underneath the holding cords in the middle here to make my next double half hitch. But we've just separated out these cords, so it's kind of going to get trapped in between the knots and be pointing outwards to the side from that cord that we're making. So again, make a double half hitch with this working cord around all the holding cords there, push it all the way up, and then that will trap these cords on the side to be pointing straight outwards. Once more to make the double, like that. And then we need to make the next set, so I need to separate out my next set of cords, again one on each side, and like before, try and choose the ones that are naturally going towards that side. So I'm separating out that one, and then I'm taking one from the other side, and that'll be that one, and just bring it out to the side. And again, I'm putting them over the working cord that I then now need to bring back underneath to the opposite side of where it's coming out from to be able to make the next double half hitch. Tighten it all the way up below the previous knot, and again you now have two cords on each side trapped, so they're pointing straight outwards to the side. And once more here for a double, always making the double half hitch. And we need to do it again until we only have a working cord that we've been working with, but then also one holding cord in the middle still. We need to be left with one holding cord running down the middle here as well. And then to trap these next two in place, we just do the same thing. Bring the working cord underneath over to the other side, and then make your double half hitch to trap these next ones in place to this side, like that. So you can see we now have three on each side there. You can always just pull them outward a little bit to the side to make sure they're going straight out. And then the last set, so we have four on each side. Separate out the last two cords from the middle here. Again, the ones that are more naturally pointing towards that side if you can. And the last one out over the working cord, remember that. So now we only have the working cord is this one that's coming out from the middle where all the knots that we made, and then we're going to have one holding cord left in the middle here from all the center cords that we had originally. So I bring the working cord back underneath that single one now, make a double half hitch with that, tighten that underneath all the other knots. And this is then going to be the last one for now in the center of the bracelet. So there we go. Now trapped four cords on each side here. And it's now those that we're going to start working with to then create the wings. So these two in the middle that we have left, the last holding cord in the middle, and the one that's the working cord throughout the whole middle here, we can just kind of put these downwards and out of the way for now, because we won't be using them until we're then finished actually making the wings on the side. So then what we're going to do is we're going to work with one side at a time, just making one wing here, one side of the wings at a time. And I'm just going to grab another pin, makes it a little bit easier to kind of pin down this cord that we've made. Just helps hold it in place so it doesn't move around too much while we're working with it. So just something like that. So I'm just going to start on my left side. It doesn't matter what side you start on because we'll be doing the exact same thing, just obviously mirrored to each other. So we now have these four cords on the side there. So what I'm going to do is start taking the very bottom one, and that's the first one that's going to then be the holding cord to make our next row of knots. So I'm then going to take this bottom cord out of the four, it's going to be the first holding cord, and what we need to do is make the next row of knots going upwards, basically right next to the cord that we've already made. So we need to use these three cords going out to the side, one at a time, as the working cords. So we need to take the first one we're going to run into, and that's the bottom one out of them. So I'm going to separate that out, and then I'm going to bring the holding cord here, it's going to go above that. So I need to bring the next working cord, so the second cord up from the bottom here, below the holding cord. And then I'm going to do a double half hitch with this. So I take the working cord around my finger and back through the loop, the exact same way that we did in the core of the bracelet. Now when we're tightening this, we want to make sure we have the holding cord in the right direction that we want the row to go. So that means before I'm tightening the knot, I want to point this holding cord upwards, just like that, and then I tighten it down. And then we need to do one more to get a double half hitch. Again, before I tighten it, I bring the holding cord upwards and then tighten the knot downwards like that. And then you're going to be able to see that that's going to start creating the row going upwards right next to the cord there. So I'm going to grab the very next cord going out to the side that we're running into, bring that underneath the holding cord again, that's the next working cord, do a double half hitch with that around your finger and through the loop. And again, before we tighten it, I bring the holding cord upwards and then tighten my knot, and once more for the double, push the holding cord up and then tighten your knot. And then we have one cord left, bring that underneath your holding cord, do your double half hitch to finish off this row. That's basically the beginning part of the wing, so just like that. So now we have the holding cord sticking pretty much straight upwards, and the three working cords that we just used to make this row with are going still straight out to the side, but we just created one more row with them, and we're now going to use again the holding cord to make the next part of the wing as well. So then that part we're going to make now with this holding cord is going to technically be the bottom part of the wing, and once we've made it, it's going to be the bottom part of the wing there. And what we need is to cut an extra 2 lengths of cord for this side. So for the whole set of wings, just right here we need 4, but just for one side we need 2. So I'm just going to use these 2 first, and they're about 30 centimeters long. We don't really need to use the whole length, but we need to have enough to be able to work with it as well. So just short lengths like that. And then what we're going to do is need to attach these lengths. So I'm going to fold them over, put the ends together to find where the middle is here. Going to keep hold of that as a bit of a loop. And then I'm going to take this holding cord that's pointing straight upwards, and we need to attach these 2 new short lengths of cord to that holding cord. And we're going to use a lark's head knot for that. So I'm going to put the loop underneath the holding cord, put my fingers through the loop, back over the holding cord, and pull the ends through that loop. So we get something that looks a bit like this. And then pull that tight onto the holding cord. Now that's a lark's head knot. What we then also need to do is fill it out a bit more. So we need to add a half hitch on each side of the lark's head knot. So I'm going to take, you'll find that your 2 lengths of cord here coming out naturally to each their own side. So just take the one towards the right side, stay on the right side of the lark's head knot, back over the top of the holding cord, and back underneath and through the loop. So you're getting this. And then as we tighten that, that's going to tighten right next to the lark's head knot and kind of bulk it out a little bit, make it wider. The same with the other side, the one to the left, stay on the left side of the lark's head knot, around the top, back underneath and through the loop to get this half hitch and tighten that. So we now ended up with a lark's head knot with a half hitch on each side, and I'm going to push this down to basically continue the row a little bit right at the end of the row that we made with all these working cords. So just push it all the way down there, and then you want to take your other length of cord and attach that to the holding cord in the exact same way. So now that we have both of these short lengths of cord attached here to the holding cord, what you'll find is obviously we have a lot of cords going on, but just try and keep them separated. We have our 3 working cords that are coming from the row going straight upwards, kind of pointing out towards the side. Then we have the holding cord where we attached the new cords to, and these new cords are kind of pointing downwards over the top of the other working cords pointing out to the side. So just try and keep your cords separated like that a bit. Makes it a bit easier to keep them organised and not accidentally mix them up. So now what we need to do is use these cords that are crossing over So the ones going straight out to the side and the new ones that we attached coming down over the top of them to make some more rows of knots here. And we're also going to then start adding in a bead to get this angel wing effect on it. And then again, I just want to get out another pin here just to fasten down this row as well where we added the new cards. Just makes it a little bit easier to work with and help keep our distance between the rows that we're going to make. So just pin it through like that so it sits nicely, a bit of an angle outwards. So just like that. So now we have all these cards crossing over each other. What we need to do is start making the first row. So what I'm going to do is the cards coming underneath that are going straight out to the side, so the long ones here, we need to use the very first one from the top. So the one that's closest to these cards, the cards that are crossing over. And I'm going to take that, separate it from the others. The other two long ones are just going to stay out to the side for now. I'm going to bring this over the short ones that are pointing straight downwards, and this is then going to start making the first row. And then out of the short cards here, we want to then take the very first one that we run into, and that it's basically the two right next to each other in the corner there that we're going to be using first. And what I want to do is start making my row of knots, but I don't want to do it straight below the row that we have where we attach the cards. I want to leave a bit of gap and start making a bit of an angle because we need to fit in the beads as well. So I'm going to take the working card that's coming underneath, that's a short one, around my finger and back through the loop. Again, making double half hitches, so exactly the same knots as we've done throughout so far. And tighten that all the way into the corner. But when I'm tightening these knots, what I want to do is the holding cord, the direction that you hold that in, kind of dictates where your row is going to go. So, another one for a double half hitch. So that means whenever you're tightening your knots, where you hold your holding cord, it determines where the direction of your row is going to go basically. So you want to make sure you start leaving a bit of a gap so you don't have this row that you're making now too close to the one above it. So that's the first knot. So now I'm reaching my next cord here, the next working cord. We're just making one double half hitch with each working cord. This one I want to add on my first bead to. So I'm going to grab my 2mm metal spacer bead, because this is the smallest bead that I have, and because this is the innermost part of the wing, is also the smallest space that we need to fill in. So that's why I'm using that here. Push it all the way down so it sits in between the two rows. So you can see that's why we need to make sure we leave enough space, kind of graduating outwards, because then the beads are going to gradually get larger as well. Then I'm going to make a double half hitch with this cord, also to secure in that bead. And now we just want to basically continue this row in the same direction that it's already going. Grab your very next working cord. Always make sure you grab the very next one and you don't cross them over. And this one I'm just going to leave as it is and not add a bead onto. Just continuing the row with a double half hitch. Just like that. So now we only have one of our working cords left of the short ones that we attached. And what I'm going to do is take my pin out here again at the end of the row, just because we're now actually using that last cord, just to make sure I tighten it nicely before I use it. And then here again, we want to then add in a last bead on this row. So what we have is no bead, a bead, no bead, a bead. And this one is going to be the bicone that I'm using. I'm using the bicone at the end of every row to help give the nice sparkle at the end, kind of the end of the wings, but also help with the actual shape of the wings, because the bicone is my largest bead, so obviously we're graduating outwards, so the outer part of every row is going to be the largest part. Again, push that all the way down. Your working cord is coming underneath the holding cord. Make a double half hitch. Tighten that. And there we go, continuing the row. And now to finish off the row, because obviously we have no more left of these short cords, so what I'm going to do is take the top one we have left that was the holding cord throughout this whole thing, the one that we attached our new cords onto as well, bring that down underneath this holding cord that we're currently using, and basically treat that and use that the same way as these, the short ones, and just have that lay around the outer side of the bead there, the bicone, to finish off the row. And again, don't add in a bead because we already added the last bead, which was the bicone. So we're just using this to finish off the row nicely. And give it a nice shape. Make a double half hitch. just like the other time. So there we go. Now that's also pointing straight downwards along with all these short ones. So the first 4 cords in this row pointing straight down from the inner part are the short ones, and the next one is a long one. So this is basically the first row, the bottom part of the wing. So now what we need to do is start moving on to make the very next row. So how we're going to do that is then all these working cords that are pointing straight downwards that we used to make the row that we just did, I'm going to use them again, but I'm going to move on to the next cord coming from the inner part going straight outwards. So I'm going to separate that out and bring it on top of all these cords. And this is now going to be the next holding cord. So this is coming straight above all the rest of these pointing straight downwards. And now as well, because you can see it moves around a little bit, what I'm going to do is just take my pin again and put it through the piece of work that I've already done, because now we have some work done, it's easier to do that and we don't have to necessarily keep taking it out. Again, the last cord coming underneath from the middle pointing straight out to the side, we're not using that one yet. So the one that's coming straight over all the top of all of these is the holding cord for this next row. So to begin with, again, separate out the cords coming underneath, that's all the working cords. And like I said, we start with the 4 short ones. The very first one in this case now, we want to add in a bead straight away to this. And again, because this is the smallest space from the inner part, we need the 2mm spacer bead onto this length of working cord. Push that all the way down, just like that. And then we need to make the very first knot. So a double half hitch around the holding cord, tighten that nicely, like that. And then it's the same principle where we do a bead, no bead, bead, no bead. So because we just did a bead, that means now we want to not add a bead in on the next working cord. So you just take it and make a double half hitch around the same holding cord. There we go. So the next cord we have is still a short one, and on this one we do want to add in another bead. And in this case, because this is kind of the middle, this is where I then want to use my middle sized bead. So this is my seed bead. Just add that on. Let it drop all the way down, always in between the 2 rows, so we can cage that bead in with the next knot here. Tighten that with a double half hitch, working our way outwards. The next cord, we don't add a bead into that, just make a double half hitch with it. But now we reach the last one, and we just used all the short cords, so now what we have left is the long one. But because this is the last one we're going to add a bead to, this is where we then want to add the bicone, because again this is the largest spacing where the bicone is going to fit in nicely. So just add that onto your cord and let it drop all the way down. Make sure it goes underneath the holding cord so it just slots in the right place there. It's going to sit nicely there. Make a double half hitch with this long cord as well, the current working cord. Tighten that, and it's going to cage that bead in place. There we go. And now, again, same principle as the first one, we need to just finish off this row. So we take the holding cord from the previous row, bring that down underneath the holding cord, the current holding cord, and this now turns into the next working cord. And all we do is just make another double half hitch with that. So around your finger through the loop, pull it all the way through, and then tighten it. And then we also get that nice shape on the end around the bead. So there we go. That's now the next row. And then we've ended up with 4 short cords, still the first ones, and then we have 2 long cords pointing straight downwards. So that's now 2 rows. Now we need to move on to make the very last one to complete this side of the wing. And we do that again with the exact same principle. All the working cords pointing straight downwards are going over the last cord we have left that's going out to the side that we haven't used yet. We want to bring that over the top of them to be the next holding cord to make the next row here. And then to make this row, again, every time we made a row, we're basically getting 1 extra working cord to work with. So for this one, we want to start making our row without a bead on the first working cord there. So I just want to take that around my finger and through the loop to make a double half hitch. And remember, we need to still make sure we have that gap enough graduating outwards, so we can add in beads here from the next card. So like that, you can see, hold your holding card in the direction so you get that similar spacing to all the other ones. So the next working card, this is where I need to add in my 2mm spacer bead. Like that. Push it all the way down, right in the inner corner there. Do a double half hitch around that to fasten that in place. And now the next card again, because we just added a bead, we don't want to add a bead to the next working card, so just make a double half hitch with that and tighten that nicely. And then the next card, the next working card here, that's the last of the short ones. This one I then want to add on my seed bead because that's the middle size, because we're kind of in the middle of the row. Push that all the way down and then cage that in again with a double half hitch, working our way outwards. Moving on to the next card, because we just added a bead, we want to not add a bead to this one, but just make a double half hitch, working our way almost out to the end of the row, where we need to add in the very last bead, which is then the next working card that we've got to now. So this is then where we'll have the largest gap in the row, and that's where we want to then add a bicone. And this is then onto a long length of cord. So get your bicone onto that, push it all the way down to sit in that gap in between the rows, just like that. Cage it in with a double half hitch, tighten it nicely, like so. And again, to finish off this row, we need to complete it by using the holding cord from the previous row. Just bring that down and underneath the current holding cord to become the last working cord, and tighten that nicely with a double half hitch as well. So there we go. That's now the very last row. So this side is pretty much done now. We're done adding in beads to this side because we've got the whole shape of the wing that we want now. Just going to bring all the cords down to separate them out. So we have all the long ones. We have 3 pointing downwards at the end, and the first 4 are the short ones here. So now what we need to do to finish off this side fully is we need to have the long cords coming back in towards the middle, because we need to then, once we made this wing, we need to move on to make the next wing, but we need to have this core running through the middle of the bracelet to connect to that next wing. So that means all these 4 long cords right on the outside of the wing, they need to be brought back into the middle. We don't need to bring in the short ones because these we're going to add in new ones to every single wing, so they can just be cut off when we get there. But the long ones need to be brought in, and to do that, all I'm going to do is take the very outer one, that was the last holding cord that we used, and I'm going to bring it back over in the opposite direction, over all the cords pointing straight downwards. Let's put all the others out of the way here so we don't get confused. And then we want to make a row on top of the previous one that we just made to bring all these back in. So I'll grab the very first cord that's coming underneath that I run into, that's one of the long ones, and that's going to be the first working cord, this one in my right hand in this case, coming back towards the middle. Going over all the others, that's the holding cord. So I'll take my working cord and make a double half hitch, so around my finger and through the loop. And then when I'm tightening this, again, make sure you hold your holding cord in the direction that you want your row to go. And I want this row that I'm making now to be right as tight as possible, close up against the previous row there of knots. So that means I'm going to push it upwards a little bit against it and then tighten the knot nicely. And once more for a double half hitch. So there we go. So that was the first one. So we need to move on to use the next working cord coming underneath, but remember we need to bring all the long cords into the middle. So that means we can't just leave the one we just used as a working cord behind. We need to bring it in. So all I'm going to do is bring it in with the holding cord that's coming then over all the others. So that means now I've basically got 2 holding cords here acting as one. And then I'm just going to take the very next one coming underneath, that's the next working cord, make a double half hitch with that one. Again, as I'm tightening this, push my holding cords upwards so they become nice and tight against the previous row. like that. So in that case, now we have both two of our long lengths of cord here are working their way back inwards towards the middle. Because this one we just used is also a long one, I'm going to bring that back in and do exactly the same thing. So just bring it in with the other, so we now have 3 holding cords acting as one. The next one of the working cords is also a long one, that's the last of the long ones. We do a double hair hitch with that. Remember to tighten it nicely, push your holding cords upwards a bit to get your rows nice and tight together here. And because this is also long, remember to bring that in. Always remember when it's the long ones, we need to bring them in back towards the middle. So now all I have left are the short ones here pointing downwards. Again, the very next one, make sure you always grab the very next one. Just do a double hair hitch with that. Tighten it nicely to get your rows nice and tight. But now because this is a short one, all I'm going to do is leave it out to the side and I'm not going to bring it in. Because we don't want the short ones brought into the middle. Because we don't need them anymore after this. Let's take the very next one. Tighten that. Your double hair hitch. Leave it out to the side. The very next one you run into, again make a double hair hitch. Working your way inwards. So we now got all these long ones, just the 4 long cords, all working as one holding cord basically. The very last one we've got left of all the working cords, make your last double hair hitch. And then once you've done that, you have your row right above the previous one, working your way back in towards the middle. Your short ones are just left out to the side. We're just going to get rid of them separately. But all the long ones here are now brought back in towards the midpoint there, where we can then start using them again in the core of the bracelet. So this is basically one side done. So one full side of the wings done in one section here. And basically now what you want to do is the exact same thing but on the opposite side. So I'm just going to talk through how to start out, but it's the exact same thing like I said. So we just need to first of all separate out all the cords. Again, using your pins is really helpful because it helps keep your work nice and tight, so it doesn't move around too much while you're working with it, because that can get quite frustrating. And I like to try and put my pins in between my rows or in between my knots, not, if I can help it, not straight down through my knots, because that can damage the cord a little bit. So the bottom 2 or the middle 2 here, remember to not use these, because these, one is the very last holding cord of all the core that we've made, that's pointing straight downwards, and then the first one out of the ones pointing out to the side is the one that we made all the knots in the core. So that was your working cord to make the core. We're not using those 2 again, same as the other side. All we want to use are the 4 on the side that we separated out as we were making our knots down the core there. So to start off with, you want to do the exact same thing. Take the bottom one, bring it over the others here. The very next one comes underneath. Start making a double half hitch. And then tighten that. Again, holding your holding cord upwards and pushing it inwards a bit to make this row of knots go straight upwards right next to the core. Like that. Grab the very next one, round your finger and through the loop. Tighten your knots. Straight upwards here. It's going to end up looking exactly like the other side, just mirrored obviously. And then we reach all the way to the top here using the last working cord. Just like that. And then this was the holding cord that's now kind of pointing upwards. And we have our 3 cords that we just used that again just pointing out to the side. And now what you want to do, you got to the point where you want to add your 2 new cords. So the short lengths of about 30 centimeters each, like I said. These 2, one at a time, onto this holding cord that we just used that's pointing straight upwards with the lax head knot with a half hitch on each side. Add them, push them all the way down, and then after that we start making our rows of knots, adding in the beads in the exact same way. So that's all you really need to do. It's the exact same thing, just mirrored on the other side. So you want to do this side of the wing, Remember to bring all the long cords back into the middle, but leave the short ones out to the side. Then once you've done that, we basically completed one set of wings, and then we just need to kind of fasten them in place here and then work our way towards the next one. So now that we completed the other side of the wing as well, what we've ended up with is all the short cords just put out of the way. Then we have two groups of cords here, one on each side, and these are the four long ones from each side that we brought back in. They're just kind of pointing in towards the middle, wanting to cross over. Then I have the two in the middle, the one that was the holding cord throughout, that we ended up with just the single one there, and the other one was the working cord where we made the core of the bracelet. So now what we need to do is bring it all together. So I'm going to take my two groups, one from each side there, and then put them together with the holding cord, the single one in the middle. So like that. So bring them all back together, just how they were right at the beginning before we started making the wings. And then I'm going to take the working cord, it's coming out to this side, I need to bring it back under to the other side to make my next double half hitch. And just hold all your holding cords together as if they were one. Then we want to just make the next double half hitch here to secure this all in place, and just push it all the way up. Another one for a double here, and there we go. And then we basically secured it in place. And then to continue, I want to bring my working cord back underneath all the holding cords and make another double half hitch. And basically I'm just picking back up what I did at the beginning to make the core of the bracelet, because I just want to make a little connection here until we make the next wing. I don't want to do that straight away because I think they'll be too close together. So I just want to make a few more knots here. However long you want in between your wings is completely up to you. You just want to keep making knots until you basically want to start your next wing. So wherever you want your next wing to be positioned. So I'm going to make a few more to do that. I'm going to probably have about 1 to 1.5 to 2 centimeters between each wing. It's completely up to you, like I said. But then you want to start over, repeat the exact same thing that I showed you here, and then just keep going like that until you reach the length that you want it to be. So I now kept making my wings here, one after the other, until I reach the length that I feel is going to be right for my bracelet, bearing in mind whatever clasp you want to make on this as well, that's going to take up some space. So as you can see here, it looks a bit messy because we have all these lengths of cord left. These are all the short ones that I added into each wing along the way, and that we left out to the side as well when we brought the longer ones back into the middle. So I've just left them out of the way and they're still attached. So that's what we then need to get rid of now, all these extra cords, so we can then finish up the bracelet completely. And then also at the end down here, I continued making some of my double half hitches, just using this working cord we used throughout the centre of the bracelet a little bit further than in between. So about the same length that I had up here, just to make it nice and even on both ends. And I've ended up having this left, and then the whole bunch of cords as well that we also used to make the wings, and we brought them out and brought them back in, all the long ones here. Now what you'll find is this one has been used up quite a lot. That was the working cord throughout the centre, like I just said. That gets used up by far the most, so there's not that much left here. There'll be enough left to make a couple more wings maybe, but not much more than that. Whereas all these that we actually used to make the wings throughout, the bunch of the long cords, you've got quite a long length of each of these left. So what I've just done here, I just made all the same length just for the easiness of it. But you could also do a different way if you want to make sure you save as much cord as possible. So you have as little wastage as possible, because you use them different lengths than each other. Like I said, this one gets used far more than all these long cords here. So if you want to have minimum wastage, what you could do is, we got the 10 lengths of cord here, then we still need this one that we're going to use for the core of the bracelet, the working cord throughout the centre. That's going to be the same length, but then all the rest of them here that we then use for the wings, you can actually make them about 1 metre shorter than the original measurement. So it's really up to you if you prefer doing that or not, or if you're not too bothered about how much cord you're wasting. You could also just cut them off and you can still use the excess of this. You don't have to get rid of it because there's quite long lengths left. So it's completely up to you what you want to do with that. Just make sure, if you do have them different lengths, that you do take the longest one out of them. If you have this whole bunch shorter and then one long length to be the working cord, make sure that when you start your bracelet up here, you want to make sure you take that long one to be the centre cord, working cord throughout the whole centre of the bracelet there. So the other shorter ones are going to be the ones that make the wings. So it's completely up to you what you want to do, if you're bothered about having wastage of your cord or not. But then what we need to do now is, when we got to this point, the main part of the bracelet is really done. What we need to do then is get rid of all these excess cords, like I said, and that's what I'm going to show you now. So we're just going to work with one of our set of wings here at a time. So how I'm going to do that is I'm just going to take one wing at a time here and work my way upwards and just kind of try and get the other side of the way so we don't accidentally cut or singe anything that we don't want to. So all I'm going to do is we have these 4 lengths on each side of one set of wings here. And then, because I'm using a synthetic cord, what I'm going to be able to do is actually singe this down. So, to do that, I'm going to take my scissors, and then these lengths, just doing one side at a time, I want to cut them down to have about 1 or 2 millimeters left sticking out from where they're coming out from. So we'll not cut them right down, but don't leave them too long either. So, something like that. Cut them down so there's just a little bit left, and then I'm going to take a lighter here and we're going to singe this down, just the ends. It's going to seal them in place and also get rid of them and be nice and comfortable. Now this is obviously a naked flame, so do be careful using it as it does get hot. I'm just going to gently singe the ends here so they kind of melt down, and I can do this because this is synthetic cord, like I said, and then I just push them down. The very ends pushes them down, and that seals the whole thing in place. So you have a nice finish, and you pretty much can't really see it, and also it doesn't feel horrible or scratchy or anything. You can also, if you don't want to touch it, you can use your lighter to kind of push the ends down. It's completely up to you. Then that's how I would singe off the ends all the way up, do the same thing. Now if you're not using a synthetic cord, or if you're not comfortable using a lighter there to do this, the naked flame, what you could do as well, or instead, is add a bit of glue right to where these cords are coming out from, and just let it dry for a bit, cut off the excess, and then just kind of, while it's still tacky, just press the ends in so it seals it in place nicely. So you could also do that, just finish it off with a bit of glue and cut off the excess. So it's completely up to you how you prefer to do it, but just get rid of all these ends now in whatever way you want to, and then you'll be able to see the wings a lot more clearly. So I now got rid of all the excess cords here all along the way, all the wings. So this is what mine looks like. And on the back it looks like that. So obviously there is a front and a back, but it's still going to be nice and comfortable to wear. So you get all your wings here, and obviously when we were making it, we were kind of making it upside down. So starting with the bottom part of the wings and then finishing off with the top part, but then obviously you just flip it around when you're done with it. So all that's left to do now is finish off the ends here. Now you can really do that however you want to. What I'm going to be doing is using some cord ends to finish them off nicely, and then using some findings. So lobster claw clasp and extended chain. So it's adjustable as well, but how you do it is completely up to you and what kind of findings you want to use. So I do have a tutorial where I show some different ways how to finish off macrame bracelets. So I'm going to put a link to that in the description box below. You can have a look at that one if you're not sure how to do it. But then all you need to do is finish these ends off, and then you'll have your finished bracelet. I've then finished off my bracelet here with the cord ends on both ends and also my clasp, and then it's ready to wear. It looks something like this. So use your clasp and close it up, and then it'll sit something like this on your wrist, so it can give a really nice effect with your wings all the way around your wrist here. So that's how the bracelet ends up looking with these materials anyway. Obviously you can make it look completely different depending on what materials that you do choose to use, but that's completely up to you. So that's how you make this bracelet with a nice wing design all the way down. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make these butterflies on a core running down the middle there, and that's what it looks like. So this one I've made, in this case, I've just turned into a bracelet length. So it'd be nice, you can have all these butterflies going around your wrist. You can obviously make them smaller if you want to by using a different type of cord. So then I just attach clasp and extender chain by using cord ends as well. You can finish off yours however you want to. But then there you have your butterflies going all the way